Futures trading involves risk and is not suitable for all investors. Content provided in this segment is meant for educational purposes and is not a solicitation to buy or sell commodities.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the Grain Feed, brought to you by EverAg. This is your weekly news feed for all things grain and all things feed. Each week we bring you updates on the markets with unique perspectives from an amazing team of analysts with the intention of helping dairy and livestock producers manage their risk. I'm your host, Jim Matthews, reporting from Chicago. We've got a little winter storm supposedly heading into town, perhaps providing a glaze of ice. We used that word today on one of our calls, a glaze. Might have to check in with our special guest today on if we ever heard of that term for ice in her neck of the woods. So let's bring her on here. Joining me today from upstate and perhaps Western New York, Market Intelligence Director and loyal Bills fan, Miss Kathleen Wolfley. You feeling good?
I'm doing great today. I'm doing great. You know, you're talking about ice. I actually had to call one of my neighbors who has one of those little salt thingies on the back of his truck because I do live in Rock Salt, USA. And he did me a real favor this morning and came and got some salt on my driveway. I don't know if it's going to make a difference, but I'd really like to not eat you know what walking out to my car this afternoon.
I do know what you mean. And I appreciate that cover up because it is a family show.
It's a family show.
We can recognize what we might eat.
Cake. Some ice cream cake.
Yeah, sure. There you go. It sounds like we both have some weather coming through in the northern tier, if you will, of these great United States. So it's going to be a cold one, but it's winter again. We expect.
Yeah, it just means that the bugs aren't going to be bad this summer, right?
Yeah, that's what I tell myself. Yeah, let's just get rid of them while we can. Ice them out, freeze them out, whatever we got to do. It also means there's a Super Bowl.
Let's not talk about that.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, the Bills were in contention, so I know it's very difficult for you, but
Yep.
At least you can say that.
Yeah.
So as a fan, congrats on the progress. As a Bears fan, you know, we're always going to rebuild, aren't we? We're just always going to.
Hey, we were there for a long time, Jim, so.
That's right. And ultimately it leads you to routine AFC championships. And so we're
Right, exactly.
striving for the same.
And for that, I'm thankful.
Yeah, as you should be. As you should be. I know it's tough. We're also thankful for our Insights crew, who Paige is going to help timestamp our broadcast here because it is Wednesday afternoon, recording the grain feed on Wednesday. And the grain and feed markets, at least, tried to close in the red for the most part. We have March corn closed down just a penny and a quarter, just down slightly, while May was unchanged, but March was at 493 and a quarter, just edging slightly lower. It did have a bit of a comeback here later in the session. It was down, let's say, about 4 to 5 cents at one point here. We did have the wheat market ultimately close down close to a nickel. The bean market and the soy complex in general really remained under pressure, with March beans down 18 at 10.57, and March soybean meal, that stubborn little byproduct, pulled back 5.70 today, so it's back under 3.10, but that's after two pretty wild days higher in the soybean meal market on Monday and Tuesday. So just a ever so slight pullback compared to what we've had over the past couple of days. And we spent a lot of time talking about how this futures rally has helped keep basis under pressure last week with Mr. Jake Kingsley. Jake is on the road visiting some farms here this week. So we have Kathleen Wolfley here to talk the milk markets. Kathleen, we were at IDFA together last week, which was lovely, by the way, to spend time with you and watch you in action. I think you did some dairy download hosting live on the premises.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a podcast listener, a regular podcast listener, we have the Grain Feed podcast, we've got Parlour to Plate podcast, and also the Dairy Download, which we do in partnership with IDFA. It's another great podcast, bring in some outside guests, talk about all things dairy markets, trade, everything in between. But yeah, we did some live recordings of the Dairy Download podcast with our colleague Phil and a variety of different high-profile folks in the industry. So it was pretty cool.
Excellent. Yeah. And you guys did an awesome job there. Really, the whole EverAg crew did an amazing job representing. And Kathleen, it's pretty goofy 1 week, I guess, since IDFA. And I know it's become somewhat of a, beaten up headline, if you will. But we really, since we got back from San Antonio, there was a trade war and then wasn't one, but there still kind of is one. We saw a huge swing in the grain and feed markets for sure, especially in corn, but we know it also has had an impact on the dairy markets. So what are you seeing out there over the past week since IDFA?
Here is a better question, Jim. What do you know about Drake's Passage?
Oh, not much. What was it like is this like the OG Panama Canal?
Well, no. I mean,
Or is this about the rapper Drake? Is it hip hop?
definitely not hip hop. Definitely not about the rapper Drake. If you can call Drake a rapper. In any case, Drake's Passage, according to Wikipedia, is the body of water between South America's Cape Horn, Chile, Argentina, and the South Shetland Islands of Antarctica. It is well known to have 40-foot swells. It's like the roughest seas out there. I'm listening to a book that's talking about a 1900s explorer going to try to get to Antarctica.
Okay.
In any case, as I've been listening to this book, I got to thinking, wow, the dairy markets are just like Drake's Passage. It's like up 30 one day, down 30 the next.
Amazing.
And it's been super hard to follow. And I think that the trade discussions have only exacerbated this volatility, especially in front months. I mean, just last week, we saw February and March getting tossed around a bunch one day to the next. And I think to your point, the tariffs on, tariffs off, the very least from a psychology perspective, I think that there's been a lot of concern around what's going to happen with these 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada. How are they going to retaliate? Mexico, for one, is a huge buyer of U.S. dairy products. We had the December trade data land today, and we shipped 38 million pounds of cheese to Mexico in the month of December. Year to date, we shipped 425 million pounds of cheese to Mexico, up 30% year over year. Mexico accounted for almost 40% of U.S. cheese exports during 2024. On the powder side, we export about 50% of the powder that we produce to Mexico. So seeing any retaliatory tariffs on the dairy industry could still be detrimental to U.S. dairy trade here in 2025. As you noted, Jim, there was a pause on both the Canadian and the Mexico side on these tariffs. The tariffs on China did go through, though we haven't seen any retaliation on the dairy industry in particular. So I think for right now, there's a little bit of calm. There's a bit of a deep breath in the marketplace. But as I noted, it's still a very fluid situation. Anything could change on a dime. We've certainly seen this administration acting swiftly with ideas and initiatives. There's been some negotiation that's been ongoing between the three countries, but I expect this situation to remain volatile, just given, in particular, the psychology at play and the sheer volume of exports at play as well.
Yeah, and I think folks have heard us talk a lot about the feed side of this as well, because it's a double impact on the American dairy farmers operation, right? Where does the demand ultimately come from some of our milk products? Where does the demand come from our feed products that we feed these animals? The Mexican side of this discussion has very much been a corn-led discussion. And, it's just since IDFA, we saw that Wednesday, Thursday, Friday trade in corn go from trying to establish new highs to gapping lower Thursday into Friday, back down aggressively again Sunday night into Monday. And then Monday, hey, I think we figured something out. Maybe Mexico is going to provide more border security. And hey, maybe the Canadians are going to as well. And you've seen the corn market recover and also test new highs today on Wednesday as we record. But the Canadian side, more of a canola impact for a lot of our dairy farmers and being that protein source and or alternative. So extremely important to watch here. Ignorant question on my part, regardless of trade policy, Super Bowl weekend, big dairy weekend? Is this a big cheese weekend?
I would think so. I mean, if you think about chicken wing dip and quesos and pizza,
Right.
it's usually a pretty big weekend. Probably a bigger weekend for chicken wings.
Sure.
But I could be wrong about that. Pizza and chicken wings in Western New York go together. So to me, it's like you can't have one without the other.
Right.
But yeah, as we think about domestic demand, there's basically 4 holidays at play through the winter season. You've got Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, Super Bowl. So it does kind of continue the demand season a little bit into that mid-January timeframe.
And just so everyone is aware, I have petitioned to have the day after the Super Bowl be a market holiday. The CME has not responded, nor has the federal government, but I'm not going to rule it out, Kathleen.
Yeah, I mean, which other holiday would you be willing to give up? Like, would you give up President's Day for post-Super Bowl holiday?
You know what? I think George Washington might have been okay with that. I think it's a pretty big day. This is America.
You never know. You honestly never know.
I think you'd be okay with that. Kathleen, real quick before we go, I think also within the past 1 week, did we not have a big cattle inventory report as we were going into the weekend?
Yeah, that's a really great point, Jim. And amidst all of this tariff discussion, we did see USDA's annual cattle report out on Friday, and it showed January 1 heifer inventories, that's dairy heifer inventories, at 3.91 million head. That was actually down 40,000 head from prior year levels. It took the ratio of replacements to milking cows down on a year-over-year basis, the lowest levels going back to 1991. So when we talk to producers, or we have talked to producers throughout much of 2024 and early 2025, they've continually said, hey, there are not a ton of animals out there. There's not a lot of replacements. And certainly the price data on heifers has confirmed that. But as we think about new plant capacity coming online and where's the milk going to come from in order to fill those facilities, I think that this heifer number definitely calls into question, once again, where is the milk going to come from? Are we going to rob Peter to pay Paul in order to get the milk into cheese facilities, maybe taking from balancing plants or dominoing milk across the country in order to get new facilities full up?
Yeah, and that's an awesome point, Kathleen, because I think that was at least one of the talking points and themes while we were down at IDFA is hey, where does this all come from ultimately? And I think that report on Friday afternoon is probably a fresh reminder that we kind of need to keep our ears perked up in terms of updates on that front, because right now, trade and tariffs are the headline. But as we talked to Parlor to Plate today with some folks, there's a lot of other big storylines that are floating around right under that major headline. So it's important to stay focused on some of those items as well. So Kathleen, in the meantime, a huge thank you for joining the show. Good luck with the salting.
Thanks.
And thanks for being here.
Hopefully it worked.
We'd also like to thank the Everag Insights crew for their support. Thank you to Paige for production magic. And thank you to the viewers for watching the Grain Feed. Contact information is on the screen. Greatly appreciate your feedback. That's all for today. We'll see you next time on the Grain Feed.